2023 season of ADAC GT Masters. Brilliant driving. It's phenomenal stuff.
We are approaching the halfway point of the season for the ADAC GT Masters, and unlike yesterday, today has dawned bright and sunny, although not especially warm, certainly not in comparison to earlier this week. 15.5 degrees centigrade is the air temperature here at the Nürburgring. Good morning, everybody. Welcome along to this, the second qualifying session of the weekend, and we are getting ready for what will be race 6 of the season, which will take place this afternoon, and the grid qualifying about to take place. You can see confirmation there, air temperature 15.5 degrees centigrade, track temperature 18.7 degrees centigrade, but the strategic bit is it is dry. Yesterday we had rain during qualifying, and then just before the race was about to commence, the heavens opened and we had a greasy track for race 5 of the season. It was a race that saw our first repeat winners of the season. It was Salmon and Vega and Elias Seppänen who took a commanding win, crossing the line 15+ seconds ahead of second place. Second place was Ralph Aron and Alan Valente. They and their team, the Haupt Racing team, did a fantastic job doing an overcut during the pit window, moving up the field and jumping from what was a fairly lowly position to ultimately finish in second place. And it was a great strategic battle that happened almost under the radar. Very few of us even noticed it was happening. Such a swift and tactical, sly move by the HRT team. In third place, it was the returning Max Paul along with Simon Connor Prim, and it was great to have them on the grid of the ADAC GT Masters. It was the return for Max Paul, his first GT Masters race this season, his 57th of his career, taking another podium, taking his 5th third place in GT Masters. It was also the debut for Simon Connor Prim, and what a great job he did. He's raced GT4 and is competing for the ADAC GT4 Championship this year, has jumped into GT Masters and has really taken to it very well indeed. He qualified the car well, and he and Max Paul bringing it home in third place in that Lamborghini, which is actually an older evolution of the other Lamborghini that was on the grid, which makes it even more impressive. You can see that the clock is ticking down. There are some cars out on track doing sighter laps at the moment, but without the risk of rain, and there doesn't look like there's going to be any, certainly not this morning, and we're hoping not at all the rest of this day. The cars are a little less eager to get out on track. It is a short, sharp qualifying session as per yesterday, a 20-minute session, of which 4 minutes have elapsed already. But with all the rain of yesterday and everything else that goes on, with the temperature slowly rising, the track will get faster as this session progresses. So many of the drivers will be waiting until later in the session before they really put in their hot laps. Of course, tyres are limited. There are 3 new sets of tyres allowed per team each weekend. So the teams have to be very strategic when they use them. So they're really going to get one shot at this to get a really hot lap in. That's a car there, the Schubert Motorsport BMW with Ben Green at the wheel. Ben, who is a 2-time winner in ADAC GT Masters. He's also the reigning junior champion in GT Masters. For the last couple of events has not really had the kind of results he had hoped for. He's had a couple of 9th places and 8th place. The second place on the debut of this season at Hockenheim seems like a distant memory, and he, along with co-pilot Eduardo Cosseteng, are looking to improve on that today. Cosseteng, who was especially impressive yesterday in what were tricky conditions. So he and Ben Green are a good combination. They just need to find a little bit more speed in that BMW to try and move it up the order, and it seems that qualifying is where a lot of it is taking place. They're struggling with the qualifying a little bit, and therefore putting themselves on the back foot when it comes to the actual race, with a lot of work that they're having to do. But Ben Green, well, if anybody can get on top of that BMW, it's Ben, and the British driver will be looking to push forwards in this qualifying session. You're looking there at the number 25 car, which has Nico Menzel at the wheel. And he, along with Janis Fischer, won last weekend at the Nürburgring, and they also got a second place. And they came into this weekend at the top of the point standings. But as a result of Simon Vega and Elias Sepinen's very strong display yesterday, they fall down to second place, albeit only 4 points adrift of Sepinen and Vega, who move to the top. To remind you, points are awarded in qualifying as well as in the race. So it's 3 points for a pole position, 2 points for a second, and 1 point for a third. You're looking at the team use by Race Motion, at least you were. In the background there, the yellow and blue Porsche. That is being driven by Sven Muller in this session. There is Ben. Good morning, Ben. Sven Muller along with Finn Gersitz, and Finn, who's debuting in GT3 racing this year, was a little bit downhearted yesterday. I personally thought he made some great progress earlier on in the race, and he with Sven Muller are quite the combination. They are currently third in the Drivers' Championship, just 6 points away from Simon Vega and Elias Sepinen. And in fourth place, it's Tim Zimmerman and Jackson Evans. They have 78 points, so they are just 9 points adrift of the top of the points championship. And Evans and Zimmerman, they took a win on their opening race of the season at Hockenheim. They followed that up with a couple of fifth places, a seventh place, and third place, which they had at Nürburgring last weekend. But they are championship contenders as well. Another driver who seemed a little bit downhearted yesterday was Kwanda Mokoena in the Liquimoli Team Engsler Audi. He's, along with his co-pilot Dylan Yip, have really got a steep learning curve. Both of them are new into GT3 racing this weekend, and they have been doing really well. But yesterday was quite a challenging day for both of them. They got a 13th place. They've had 4 10th places this year so far, so looking to improve on that as much as they can. But it is a learning curve, and Kwanda Mokoena, the thing that has been really consistent about him and Dylan Yip is that they get to the end of the races. We haven't seen them involved in dramas. They just get on with it and get the job done. And actually just surviving the race, well, that's the main bit really, isn't it? Because the points are paid at the end. And really, it's just finding a bit more pace in that Audi. But they have a great mentor in the shape of Luca Engsler, who is a driver himself in DTM, a former GT Masters driver, and also one of the team bosses, along with father Franz Engsler. But both Franz and Luca are working hard with Kwanda Mokoena and Dylan Yip to help them get up to speed. And we're really excited about what they are doing and where they are pushing forwards in GT3 racing and in the GT Masters. So, with track conditions pretty dry, although it is a little nippy compared to early on in the week, we're going to be looking at times in, I think, about the 125, 126s towards the end of this session. Fastest time so far in free practice was Max Paul. He had a 125.702. Yesterday we were in the 140s in qualifying, but that was as a result of the wet track. But we'll be looking at times in certainly the mid 120s for this race, maybe slightly higher than the 125s, because the track is a little bit green this morning. But it will take a little while to build up the pace. No tyre warmers allowed in ADAC GT Masters, so all of the heating up has to be done out on the track. We look there at Neil Verhagen. Great to have the American here in the FK Performance BMW. He's sitting in for Igor Velilko, who has had to be called away this weekend. So great to have Neil in that car alongside Kim Louis Schramm. And we're looking very good yesterday. Came home in 7th place, which was a very solid finish. That car there, Ralph Aron at the wheel, along with co-driver Alan Valente yesterday with that second place. It was their first podium of the season, and by far their best result of the season so far. And they were absolutely buzzing. As already mentioned, the HRT team were doing a wonderful job, and their strategy of leaving them out late in the pit window really paid dividends. They had open track, and they were putting in the quali laps while the rest of us were looking at everybody else. They were just chonking away, getting the track position. Then when they came into the pits from second place, came back out in second place and jumped about 6 places as a result of doing that from where they had started. So It was a really solid job from HRT for Ralph Aron and Alan Valente. It paid dividends. The bad news for them is that when this afternoon's race starts, they're going to have an extra 10 kilos of success penalty on board. Elias Seppin and Salman Vega will be carrying an extra 20 kilos, and Max Ball and Simon Conoprim will be carrying an extra 5 kilos of success penalty, which is awarded for one race only. And it's a good thing that the ADAC have introduced, and it just levels things out a little bit, but it does mean that the drivers, they don't carry it in qualifying, but the winners will carry that success penalty into the next race. There's Arjun Maini. Those are Arjun Maini's knees. You can see them jiggling about. You can see the G-forces pushing him around. He's in another of the HRT cars. One of two teams that are running two cars here, the other being Nordpass by Jutta, and it's great to have Nordpass by Jutta here. We have the regulars, Jonas Karklis and Jonas Galginis, but we've also got Justas Junosis and Simas Juodvershis, who are both Lithuanian drivers here this weekend, putting in a lot of practice. They're preparing for the Aurum 1,006-kilometer race, which is an endurance race in Lithuania. That they are preparing very much for that and using this for that. You can see Kwanda Mokoena, well, he's purple in Sector 1 and purple in Sector 2. That means he's the quickest of anybody out on the track. A green means a personal best, a purple means the best of anybody. 129.650, so we're still about 4 seconds off what we would expect to see towards the end of the session, depending on how the track evolves, really. So maybe 126, 125 if we're lucky. But Kwanda Mokoeno at the moment at the top of the timesheets with 3 purple sectors. Here comes Arjun Maini again, working just to build heat into the tyres. We have just 8 minutes of this session remaining. It really is short and sharp. Shouldn't be too much of an issue with traffic. The circuit is 3.629 kilometers around with 11 turns, 4 to the left, 7 to the right. And there are 15 cars that are going to be qualifying today. We've got 11 that are or have been out on track at the moment. In fact, that's now increased. In fact, just looking at the time screen, all bar 1 are out on the track at the moment. So finding space, though, shouldn't be difficult. It's not a crowded track, as Arjun Maini once again weaves to get heat into the tyres and get some heat into the brakes as well. Arjun Maini, who is doing DTM this year, it means that when DTM and GT Masters are on the same programme, on the same weekend, he's not allowed to race in both, as that is perceived to be an unfair advantage. So we have Maxi Gertz that sits in for him when he is not available. You can see Ralph Aron now purple in Sector 1 and purple in Sector 2. Make that the Sector 2 and Sector 3. He goes to the top of the screen, 126.692. That is the first of the representative times. Nico Menzel is the one who's stolen the purple for Sector 1 in the Porsche, so he's currently down in 13th place. But Nico Menzel, you can see him in the background there in the red, white and blue Porsche. He has been very rapid all year long. He and Janis Fitcher have joined the ADAC GT Masters. Nico Menzel, who talks about GT Masters for the German TV coverage, but has decided to actually do it himself. He is a racer, and his dad is a very famous racer as well, Christian Menzel. But they took their first win of the season at Nürburgring this time last week on the Sunday of Nürburgring, and have been championship contenders all along and will remain to be for the rest of the season. Riding on board with Marco Mappelli in the Evo 2 Lamborghini, as prepared and provided by GRT Grasser. And you can see many of the drivers just backing out of it on this lap as they psych themselves up ready for the hot lap. Marco Mappelli at 131.523, so that was very much an out lap for him. Now it really is foot to the floor as he heads into turn 1. Someone in the background has gone wide out of turn 11. You saw a little cloud of dust just rising up into the air. But the car's now pretty spaced out. As far as I can see, yes, every car is now out on the track. So it is game on, with just over 5 minutes remaining of this qualifying session. It's Ralph Aron who has the benchmark at the moment at 126.692. That is about a second slower than the fastest time that we saw in free practice during the week, but the temperatures were a lot warmer on Friday than what they are today. Nico Menzel, well, briefly he was purple in Sector 1 because that's been eclipsed by Marco Mappelli, but we're looking at Nico Menzel at the moment. The grey box indicates that his Sector 2 was neither a personal best or an overall best. He's out of turn 11 now, out onto the pit straight. So this is going to be his first real attempt to get to the top of the timing sheets. He does almost that. He's up into P2 because up into the top now is Arjun Maini, 126.195. We're going to be into the 25s before too long. So Arjun Maini now jumping to the top. Ralph Aron, who was at the top, drops down to 4th because Marcel Marchevitz, another driver who comes from GT4, goes to the top. Now Marco Mappelli. Now, we said this was going to happen, didn't we? We said that the times were going to come tumbling down as the session went, and that's exactly what's happened. Marco Mappelli at 125.340. That is the fastest time of anybody since the cars arrived at the Nürburgring at the start of this week. So Marco Mappelli really laying down the gauntlet here at 125.340. Ben Green, now that's a bit better, isn't it? The BMW up into P2 at 125.777, but that is 4/10 off an epic time from Marco Mappelli. That really is quick. Now let's have a look, see what Arjun Maini can do. He's up into P2, 125.615. So that bumps Ben Green down into 3rd. But Marco Mappelli, with 3.5 minutes remaining, is the fastest time, a 125.340. Arjun Maini working hard at the wheel of that car as he circulates and tries to improve on his 2nd place. So let's have a look. Purple, Marcel Marchevitz is purple in Sector 1 in the number 11 Mercedes. Great to have Marcel here in GT Masters, and he really is enjoying his time as part of it, but still improving. Marco Mappelli, he's now quickest again of anybody in Sector 1, a personal best in Sector 2. So looking good to improve on his 125.340. He does that at 125.231. You can see that Jackson Evans is jumped up into 4th place. Make that 5th, so that is a 125.711. Now Marco Wittmann, we haven't really mentioned him today, have we? The 2-time DTM champion who is sharing driving duties with Sandro Holzem, really nurturing and mentoring Sandro Holzem. His first ever GT Masters event. He did a great job yesterday. He's being fast-tracked into a seat for DTM. We're hoping to see him in DTM before the end of this year in the Project 1 BMW. And that man there, Marco Wittmann, is the one who has been mentoring him and helping him to get up to speed along with the team. Times continue to tumble down. Sven Muller looked like he was doing a little bit of rallycross there. You just heard the car just going fairly wide out of the corner. He's out of turn 11 now. That middle sector was not especially special, but Sector 1 was a personal best. Crossed the line, and it is a 13th, so Sven Muller will be very disappointed with that. Ben Green has jumped up into 2nd place at 125.241, just 1/100th off the time of Marco Mappelli. So Ben Green really turning up the wick in that BMW. Another BMW's Marco Wittmann is coming round the final sector of the track now. He was in P3. Is he going to improve on this? He crosses the line any second now. It is a 125.496, so he remains in P3. But Elias Seppänen, now yesterday's winner, jumping up into 4th place in the Mercedes. The times are tumbling with a little over a minute remaining of this session. We're looking at Marco Mappelli here. Looks like he did go off track a little bit. Just a bit, wipes out a bollard and something else as he does that, and it looks like Ben Green following him as well. That's a very wide line out of the corner, but everybody survives, so all is good. But Marco Mappelli doing a sterling job, and that's a great view of him as he fights that Lamborghini around this lap. We are into pretty well the last 30 seconds. We're looking at Neil Verhagen in the number 10 car. He was in 11th place now. Is he going to improve on this? I'd say he is. Well, he does by 1 place. It's number 10 into 10th. So Neil Verhagen up into 10th place. Jumping up though, Sven Muller finally pulls it all together into P3 in the number 91 Porsche, bumping Marco Wittmann down into 4th place and Seppänen into 5th. Here comes Max Paul Yesterday's third place finisher down in 9th place. He'll be disappointed with that, especially as he's going to have a weight penalty for this afternoon's race. But Marco Mappelli, as the clock strikes 0, is the man at the top of the timing sheet. So I'm just looking at the screens, and it doesn't look to me as though anybody is going to improve on that. Anybody who's on a lap at the moment is able to continue it, and it will be counted as long as they cross the line before the clock struck 0. But it looks to me as though Marco Mappelli is going to be untouchable. As things stand at the moment, the headline is it's Marco Mappelli, a 1:25.231, a very rapid time. Ben Green starting second on the grid, a 1:25.241, 1/100th of a second off pole position. Then Sven Muller putting it together at the end. Here comes Neil Verhagen. I don't think this is going to trouble any of the guys up at the front. We'll just have a look here. He was in 11th place. Max Paul also still out there to finish his lap. So Verhagen crosses the line and he remains in 11th place. Sven Muller still looking to improve as well, but it didn't look like, no, it wasn't, so he stays in 3rd place, and there is nobody else that I can see that is going to trouble the front row. Max Paul in P9. So everybody now across the line. It is Marco Mappelli who will start on pole position for this afternoon's race 6 of a 12-race season in that car there. The GRT Grasser Racing Lamborghini officially in Parc Fermé, ahead of Ben Green and Sven Muller. Just wound it up, a great time, but how close did Ben Green get to stealing that pole position away, missing by 1/100th of a second in the Schubert BMW. It is Lamborghini from BMW, from Porsche, from BMW, from Mercedes. Elias Seppänen, yesterday's winner, in 5th place, ahead of Jackson Evans in 6th. So, a great qualifying session, a lot less tricky than yesterday's, as under the shadow of Nürburgring Castle, we look at confirmation. It's Marco Mappelli, fastest, ahead of Ben Green, Sven Muller, Marco Wittmann in 4th place, ahead of Elias Seppänen, Jackson Evans, Arjun Maini, great job from Marcel Marchewitz for Schnitzelam Racing, rounding out the top 8. Great to have Schnitzelam Racing on the grid of the ADAC GT Masters, a team that are fairly local to here and have been very prolific in ADAC GT4. Certainly last year were very much there in the GT4 season, and now moving up into GT Masters for this event. We're hoping we're going to see some more of them, along with Colin Carazani, who's co-driving with Marchewitz. Looking 9 to 15, it is Max Paul ahead of Ralph Aron. A lot further back than yesterday. You're going to have to do some pit strategies there. Neil Verhagen, Nico Menzel, gosh, a long way back for him. Kwanda Mokoeno, good job there. Jonas Galginis, and bringing up at the rear of the pack, it is Justas Junosis. So that is all 15 cars that have qualified, and it is an incredibly close grid, because looking at the gaps between the first and the last, and it is just fractions of a second that separate, so about a second separating the top 12 on the grid. Really good job. All these drivers very, very quick and very competitive as we look at Marco Mappelli and the GRT Grasser team heading to Parc Fermé. Job done, and a really solid drive there picks them up points. So Elias Seppänen, Samuel Vega, 87 points. Janis Vitscher, Nico Menzel, Finn Gersitz and Sven Muller. So Muller has picked up 1 point for himself and Finn Gersitz. Gersitz gets a point without even sitting in the car. So that closes them up in the lead battle as a result of the 3rd place. There are the rest of the points as they scroll through, and there is the Pirelli Award to Marco Mappelli, a driver who has been in GT Masters for a number of years now and is a real character, and the Italian driver picking up his pole position and posing for the photographs. And he has done a lot of the hard work. I'm just looking, that is his first ever pole position in GT Masters. So Marco Mappelli scoring his first ever pole in ADAC GT Masters for GRT Grasser in the Lamborghini. So that's it. Join us this afternoon around 3 o'clock local time. It will be race 6 of the season, the halfway point for the ADAC GT Masters. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.